morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone. And I was just talking with Father Nathan Castle. He'll be back, I'm hoping, right away. I met Father Nathan at the IONS conference in Salt Lake City, and I got to watch his presentation to a standing room only room about his experiences and his processes that he uses to help beings that are stuck in the in-between pass over. So it's fascinating. I'm very excited to introduce him to you and for you to learn from him. And what I did get his flyer from that presentation. So I'm going to explain a little bit about his process while we're waiting. So his talk is Afterlife Interrupted, Helping Stuck Souls Cross Over, and the interrupted death experience process. So he is able in dream state to connect with these beings. He receives the dream and writes it down in a dream journal. Then he schedules time with prayer, and he has a prayer partner. If you go on his website, which I'll share here as well, he has a video of him working with somebody else on an iPad, a woman that helps him process everything and helps him pray, because when two or more are gathered, it's stronger. And then he begins recording. Then he reads the dream account and invites the person who experienced it to come in. And then he welcomes prophetic speech of the guardian angel or the soul that you're helping. And it includes compassionate listening. At the appropriate moment, inquiring about a guide to assist in the movement. And he'll be able to explain this and tell stories better than me just reading this list of how to do the experience. But then he uses closing prayer of gratitude and goodbyes and a possible debriefing and sending the recording to be transcribed. And for those stories we hope to share publicly, we have a follow-up session to ask permission to do so. So he has been doing this and gifting his services for years to help others and when their loved ones have been trapped, or there's he'll explain it, but sometimes these souls are trapped because they died suddenly in a tragic manner. So, and I'm hoping he'll be here soon, so I'm not just the talking head. But I'll tell you a little bit more about him while we're waiting. Father Nathan Castle, OP, is from Groves, Texas. Father Nathan received MA and his master's and a master's in divinity degrees from the Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. He served in campus ministries at Arizona State University, Stanford, and UC Riverside. Father Nathan has chaired the executive board of the Catholic Campus Ministry Association. He believes the Holy Spirit has given him a night job of helping souls who died suddenly and violently find afterlife peace. He is the author of Toto 2, The Wizard of Oz as a Spiritual Adventure, and Afterlife Interrupted, books 1 and 2, Helping Stuck Souls Cross Over. So Father Nathan, are you there? I think you're there. Can I put you on? You were there a second ago. Now you're there. I'm going to add you to stream now. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It was an internet chore to get here.
Oh,
the desert.
Yeah, I wondered what happened since you were there and then you weren't. So,
Well,
so
yeah,
welcome to Conscious Business Zone. I did explain that I had met you at IONS, and I explained this process, but it'll be much better when you can explain and share stories of how this all works and how you discovered all of this.
sure.
Okay, so you got the stage.
All right. Well, thanks for having me here. And it was great meeting you back when we were at the IONS convention in September. Um, well, I do this in two parts. For one thing, I'm a lifelong Catholic, born into a very spiritually active family who taught me the ways of the Spirit, not just the organized religion rules and regulation stuff, but I was taught that I had a home on earth and a home in heaven. I had a family on earth, a family in heaven. And in the evening before sleep, my mom would show me how to talk to my other family. We would give blessings to people that were sort of like a gift that you could send sort of through the mail, or maybe now it might be like a gift card. You don't know what they're going to do with the blessing you send them, but that doesn't matter. You love them and you're sending them something good. And that could be done for people who were alive in your house, alive in the next state over, or in the other state over. You could pray for, send blessings to people who had already died. So I just was doing that as like a 3-year-old. Then when I learned that when people die, some go straight to heaven. Um, some might go to hell, although we had never been told of anybody that was there. God would have to tell us that, and God had never said that. But in the middle, there was this other thing called purgatory, where it seemed like most people went and spent some time getting ready to be in the presence of God for all eternity. And you could help them by praying for them. So I did that as a child a lot. I would go to sleep praying for the souls in purgatory that needed to make some sort of passage. And then fast forwarding, something like 45 years later, I'm a Catholic priest on a retreat with some folks, and yeah, as I was asleep, someone came into my dreamscape and showed me how they died violently and suddenly. And I knew it was not my regular dreamscape, it was someone else's. So I woke up and said a prayer for them and said, I'll see what I can do to help. And that's how it got started.
That's so cool. So were you frightened when it first started? I mean, here you are sleeping peacefully and all of a sudden your peace is interrupted. How did that feel?
It felt more like the experience of being awakened on purpose. As a priest, we frequently the priests in an area will be on a rotation to take emergency calls at a local hospital in the middle of the night.
Oh,
That's not just priests. I'm sure there are other occupations where people have to anticipate that sometimes they might be called in an emergency and awakened suddenly to deal with whatever the emergency is. But for a priest, oftentimes there's been an accident or something in the night and you're wanted in an emergency room or something. And so it felt like that. I felt like I was being called out of sleep because someone had an urgent need. And so I just responded to it in that fashion.
well, I have to say the whole way that your way of presenting and the way that you are with people is so personable. You have this calm, loving presence that makes I mean, because you are an authority figure,
Yeah.
but you somehow are very, very, you don't take that stance. Your communication and your support, your heart energy is palpable.
Well, thank you. I hope that's always true.
Yes, yes, yes. So okay. So your first one happened. Did you? I know now you have a prayer partner to help you figure it all out. At that point, did you have a prayer partner to figure it all out, or how did you figure out what it meant?
I did, and my prayer partner was a participant in the retreat that I was on.
Oh, good.
So that morning, when I'm on retreat with other people, there are always some early risers, people that get up and jog, or at least get up early and find the coffee. And I'm not really one for morning exercise that much, but I like the coffee. So I found my friend and said to her, there was something that happened during the night that I wonder if you'd help me pray about when we get a break later in the morning. And she immediately agreed, and we had a few minutes where we could go aside and go into prayer. Part of it is listening, is just asking a question and asking the Holy Spirit, how can we help? And we listened for a while, and she said, well, whoever this man is, he really wants to talk to you. Would it be okay if I permitted him to? And I knew that she had an extraordinary gift of prophecy that could facilitate the speech of another person.
Wow.
Uh, uh, Commonly, that gets called channeling. But in my Catholic faith, that word upsets people, and so I don't use it. I believe, communities are entitled to their own lingo, and so
Yeah.
in this one of the gifts of prophecy, a prophet, it allows God to speak through them. In fact, at our worship, very often the first reading at a mass is from one of the Hebrew prophets from the Jewish scriptures, and that person will allow God to speak through them. Anyway, we had protected ourselves in prayer. I always go to St. Michael the Archangel and St. Benedict and Mary, Mother of Jesus, and different ones, my own guardian, make sure that we're surrounded by light and we're secure. And so she allowed him to speak through.
Wow. And so, so the process that you shared with us, where I have this list, there's the compassionate listening, and then inquiring about a guide to assist. Did all of that happen too, or is this the added? I mean, it must have evolved. This process must have evolved.
It did, because it was the first time it was happening, and there's no question that it's odd. I mean, it still is for me 25 years later, although it has a normalcy as anything does when it becomes a part of one's routine life. Well, he spoke through, and it's almost like when you're in some sort of public place where someone comes up to you, perhaps at a store, you say, "May I help you?" or "How can I help you?" That's what we did.
Uh-huh.
And the first words that he spoke were, "Who the hell does he think he is, taking me just when my life was getting good?" Well, I had seen a picture of him in a dream burning to death on the engine of a car. He had not been in a collision, but somehow he was dressed in greasy clothes. He was sitting on a radiator of an engine. He looked like he might repair cars. And they were from the late 50s or 60s, early 60s. They were the kind with a lot of chrome and fins on the back.
Uh-huh.
I drove one of those. My first car was the 58 Olds. And anyway, we just introduced ourselves, and he told us his name was Ray, that he had died in 1960. He had gotten his girlfriend pregnant their senior year of high school. They were living in rural Georgia. He had married her, and their child was about a year and a half. He had gone into business with a friend, repairing cars in a garage detached from their rental home. And that's where his death occurred. So it turned out that the thing that he wanted more than anything was to be with his wife, who he had been watching for about 40 years.
Wow.
He said she married again, and she married up. She married a lawyer and moved to South Carolina. They had no more children, and I don't have any beef with that man. He did a fine job raising my son, but my wife's dying of cancer now. She's an old woman, and she's dying of cancer, and I want to be with her when she passes, but I can't the way I am.
Oh, wow.
So that became our marching orders. We understood that, he's in some sort of afterlife circumstance that would prevent that, and he knows it, and he's asking us for help. So we said, okay, we've defined the problem. Now we need to figure out what the solution will be. So we worked with him over about 3 sessions, I think, over about 3 weeks' time because we were finding our way. But in all these that I've done, about 400 of them, this is the only one that took more than 1 session because we were new at it.
Right. Wow. So everything has a happy ending, pretty much, or is
They
that
do.
your intention?
Well, it's my experience, and
Okay.
it was my belief before that. I believe in the cosmic happy ending. I believe that
That's
that the whole universe that God has created, with all of its troubles and dramas and so on, uh, everything is redeemable. Uh, well, excrement becomes fertilizer. Um, you sit next to a plant, and it gets rid of that nasty oxygen that's its waste product, and we get rid of that nasty carbon dioxide that's our waste product, and
right.
each one feeds the other. I just believe the universe is put together in a way like that, and
Right.
that whenever people go through, there's a way through it. And as a Christian, the Christian story is Good Friday turns into Easter morning. The cross, which is a horrible death, becomes a passage into a new way of life.
That's so cool. So it's so cool that while you were doing all this, it didn't cause you to have to do a 360. A lot of the people that had near death experiences or who have had spiritually transformative experiences have it changed their whole life. It changed their whole worldview. But
Yes.
what's happened is it sounds like it's fortified your worldview.
Yes, and it shifted my worldview. I was given such good upbringing in a solid religious tradition. And as I said earlier, not just the rules and regulations of it, but the practice of it. And when the phenomenon of speaking through what I call a gift of prophecy had occurred in my life a couple of times before. So I knew that I also had that gift. It's just that it was kind of lying dormant. And now I can allow my voice to be borrowed by a soul in order to help them in this process. And it's not at all difficult. It's just a matter of allowing it to be.
So, do you ever have people contact you that ask like a medium, like they would want a medium reading?
Yes, I've had to build all this technology. Even getting on this call today, I had to change browsers and reboot my computer and tell it to do all kind of things. And I just amaze myself. I can hardly even believe that I know how to do these things, but here we are. You can teach an old dog new tricks. And I've forgotten my train of thought. I am an old dog. Please.
No, I guess what we're talking about is how people could benefit from.
Oh,
I know you
you
have
were asking about mediumship,
a
and
mediumship.
yeah, made a decision a long time ago to stay in my lane, and I don't do a mediumship. I on my website I say if you're inquiring because you would like me to help you be in touch with your deceased child or something like that, know that I don't do that. Uh, I'd rather help people develop their own spiritual tools and help them reimagine things because sometimes people in grief paint themselves into a very sad, dark corner and can't imagine their loved one being with them or happy or anything. So there's things that I can do to help people, but I don't do classic mediumship, bringing messages through.
So, how often do you get awakened in the middle of the night? I mean, you must be, somewhere there must be a memo that says, Dr. Nathan, not Dr. Father Nathan can help you go this way.
Yes,
Help
and
you open
I've
the other
done.
worlds.
Because you're a member of IONS, when you and just maybe does your audience know that acronym, the
Yeah,
International
yes,
Association for Near Death
I
Studies?
think so. I've interviewed a lot of people because I've been a volunteer for 5 years. been very active. So, but let's say that again, International Association for Near-Death Studies.
Right.
And it's been in existence for over 40 years. There's research as well as experiencers.
Right. And I also belong to Spiritual Awakenings International, which
you
is
do? Okay.
of IONS.
Uh-huh.
That's an international association of people that have unusual spiritual experiences from all over the map, both the geographical map, the whole world, and then religious philosophies, cosmologies, and so on. So we can differ a whole lot about how we understand things.
Right.
But it's a very respectful place where people's stories are listened to. And one of the things that we have in common in both of those groups is the experience of being disrespected by somebody who just couldn't stand to hear what we had to say.
Right.
And so, you just have to let people be as they are. But some of this can be difficult to listen to for
well, what I like, and I can identify with, is I actually see movies like what you're calling you're seeing it in dream state. I can actually do that in waking state. I can get into that space, and I think they show me, it's almost like pictographs where they figure out, okay, well, she'll know what this means, so we'll put this in the movie so that you can decipher it. Do you feel like that's what the way that your dreams are? And
it's funny. Just recently, I'm going to speak carefully. I don't go into these stories in detail without the person's permission.
Right.
And I have 26 stories over 2 books, the Afterlife Interrupted books 1 and 2, where I've done that. And so on podcasts, I don't disclose things that I haven't permission to speak about. But if I'm careful, I just had one recently that involved alligators. Why was I dreaming about alligators? And they were alligators that felt human, kind of, that had emotional range, and one was joyous and one was broken or wounded, and so on. Well, anyway, it turned out that this particular person had a great reason for people to be afraid of him, and he thought of himself as kind of a predator. That's why he chose to describe himself as an alligator.
Wow.
He said, I was also cold-blooded. But so in that case, it was, if you were in an art museum, it would have been in the non-representational impressionistic side of the museum. I studied art as an undergraduate, and sometimes people draw a tree, and a tree looks like a tree, and then other times they splash things on a canvas that are rather like a tree. But,
yes, yeah. Well, sometimes you have to use your imagination. But so, did you already have an interest in dreams? Where you? Because I don't remember my dreams.
Oh, I always have. I mean, I don't remember what I don't remember, but most any morning, if you were to greet me quickly early in the morning and say, did you have any dreams, I would probably be able to recount one.
Wow.
Or maybe more than one. But yeah, and then I did some study of dream spirituality back when I was in my 20s. There are programs where you can be with other people and exchange dreams and what the symbols might mean and so on. I did some of that as a young man. Haven't touched that in a long time, but yeah, I dream frequently.
So you're dreaming anyway, but sometimes you get these nudges.
Yes. I distinguish linguistically between having a dream or receiving a dream.
Okay, good. That's what
when I have a dream, it might be about what I was doing yesterday or what's coming up tomorrow or something. And then receiving a dream is material that is not native to me. It's somebody else's story.
And is it always violent?
Yes. I almost always deal with people who died sudden, violent deaths who needed extra help in the afterlife passage, related to the fact that it was also abrupt, and then their reactions to it: anger, despair, guilt, confusion. People sometimes, it was the way that I was taught that in purgatory, to purge means to cleanse,
right.
and that one metaphor might be maybe you felt like you needed to get washed up. You know, you needed to prepare to go to the wedding or out the door in the morning. That's one way of thinking of it. But yeah, the people that I deal with, very, very rarely do I get to deal with anybody that died peacefully in their sleep.
Wow.
When I do, it's usually because something happened during their life that made them feel like they died before they died.
Oh, I see.
You might know at least one person who has suffered some trauma that's prompted them to rather shut down
Mm.
and live at a lower level because they don't know what else to do. Once in a while, I get that kind.
And the happy endings. I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling some stories and sharing, because I really see there. Well, I've heard a lot of your stories. I watched all the YouTubes I could,
Yeah,
and I loved your presentation at IANS. I mean,
it
I
was so fun.
really.
I got to watch it the other day for myself.
Oh, you did. I'm gonna have to watch it again.
Yeah.
But what I wanted you to know is that the way that you're making this seem easy and normal is really powerful, because the the way that you're assisting others is the service and kindness that hopefully all of us will remember, that that's part of our human condition, to be
Yes.
in service.
Yes. And that doesn't stop with dying, because you stay human, and part of that humanity that you just said is serving others. And
Right.
you don't have to even be whole to do that. Think of AA, for example. It's a group of addicts sitting in a circle, helping one another move toward freedom and sobriety. It's very much like that is what I see on the other side.
Yeah. Well, so I'm always fascinated about what people see on the other side, because I've followed Roberta Grimes. I've followed so many people that give you a visual. It's almost like it's a, 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 a stage that
Mhm.
you can actually use to interpret, just like Michelangelo or Dante's Inferno. I mean, you had these hierarchies or these levels that you could at least interpret. But what you're doing, it's such a kind, like you're in the doghouse, but you can get out of the doghouse really fast.
And or slowly if you need to go slowly. One of the things that I've heard people describe it. We talk to each of these people that are listed in the books twice. Once while we're helping them effect this passage, this crossing they need to do. It's really almost like being the discharge staff in a medical center.
Wow.
Somebody's job is on the day that the person can go home to help them gather their things, to make sure they understand their medications, their physical therapy schedule, who's going to come for them, will they be well fed and clothed. Uh, it's that, and then helping them get out the door. Or those during COVID, we sometimes saw pictures of somebody that was thought to be dying who survived and was had some sort of parade of nurses on the way
Yeah.
out of the hospital,
Yeah.
maybe with helium balloons and things. Very much, sometimes it has that, where there's a care team that's been helping them all along, and there's some sort of parade or something that shoves them out the door on to the next thing.
I love that. And so, will you share a story that you are allowed to share, so that people
Of
can
it,
get
an
an
outcome.
idea? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one that comes to mind is one that I mentioned to you that well, there's this one young woman who was 24 when she was in an automobile accident that she showed me in the dream, and she showed me tumbling off the side of a road as a passenger in a car, and I woke up. I've been in many, many car crashes. I can't begin to tell you how many car crashes I've been in, hundreds. And uh, so I thought that she must have died in a car crash, but in fact, she did not. When we got to talk to her, she said, no, only half of me did. She was paralyzed below the waist. And at 24, as she was a student athlete in college and aspired to the Olympics, but now she couldn't walk. And she tried the wheelchair, basketball and stuff like that. And she said it just didn't interest her the way she hoped it would. She did dial-a-ride and therapies and so on for the next 12 years. The dial-a-ride van came for her with a lift that lifts up a person in a wheelchair and puts them in the back. It malfunctioned and she was dropped on her head and died.
Oh my gosh.
So she came our way and she had a lot of attitude. She just was barely ready to do what we were doing because she was just so angry at life in general that at 36, she had both of those tragic things happen. And then when she came our way, she was brought to us by her guardian angel. Other people at IONS might call us a spirit guide or you use some other language for it, but Catholic language is this guardian angel. Brought her to us, and we said, "Well, we'll help you. We'll get you ready." And she said, "Oh no, not afterlife physical therapy." And she was so sick of physical therapy. She said, "I went to therapy all the time, and I did get a little bit stronger, but I never could walk." Well, my partner, I was bringing her through, and my partner had been in the ministry for many years, and she said, "Well, it's a little like that, but um, I think you'll find it easier than things that you did before." And once she calmed down, she said, "You mean I need somebody to help me move from here to somewhere next? That's what I need. I need somebody to help me do that." And she said, "Yes, essentially." She said, "Well, then it would be Estelle." Well, we said, "Well, who's Estelle? Tell us about Estelle." Well, the only reason that Estelle was in my life was because she was a physical therapist trying to get me to move. And she said the other physical therapists, you go to these things and you're usually in a group and somebody with a clipboard comes in and they go through a list of things that are boring and tedious to do and then they leave. But Estelle, have you ever used the word swan as a verb?
Mm-mm.
Me
No.
neither. Well, I remember her saying, Estelle swanned into the room like she was on a stage. And she wouldn't even speak. She would just dance into the room and start swirling around and getting us all to swirl the way she did. It was balletic. We just did this artistic thing with her, and she'd pause and tell us what we were going to do next, but mostly it was just graceful, artful movement. And she was a delightful person. She loved us. Then one day she came in and told us that she just had a very serious medical diagnosis of an advanced stage cancer.
Oh.
But that she would continue to be with us and move through it and keep us informed about the state of her health. Well, she said we could see her weakened a little more each time until she couldn't come anymore. And then we were told of her death. So, but she modeled for us doing the best you can with the body that you've got,
Yeah.
And she was always inspiring. And if it's possible that she could come for me, I think she'd be the right person. So we said, well, then let's be still for a minute and just ask the spirit that brought you here and that we live and move in, if Estelle is available. And I didn't have visuals, but the woman we were helping did, and her name was Cheryl Lynn. Cheryl Lynn just said, "Oh my God, she always did make an entrance." So somehow Estelle swanned into her consciousness in the afterlife, smiling and showing her a way forward, and off they went. Then when we did a follow-up, when we decided we'd like to use that story in a book and tell it publicly, we went back to Cheryl Lynn in prayer and asked, first of all, was she available? Would she be willing to be in this conversation? And would she allow her story to be used in a book? And it's a yes or no question that could have been answered in a sentence. But instead, we got Cheryl in and she told us a story. She gave us an update. And she said, I haven't been doing much since the last time I saw you, except doing somersaults on the lawn like a 10-year-old.
Wow.
She said, I'm sure I'm going to get sick of it at some point, but I haven't yet. And nobody is shouting at me, get in here and do those dishes, or stop that nonsense. It's time to come in. She's just allowed to do what she wants to do. And all she wants to do is be a 10-year-old girl doing somersaults.
Oh. So wonderful. So when you get these dreams, which are brought to you by their guardian angel, or how does that
The
work?
guardians just help in the background like a good teacher does,
Oh,
especially like a preschool teacher or an elementary school teacher. They'll put the materials in front of you, maybe give you a little bit of guidance, but mostly their job is to help you be the agent, to give you powers and skills, and give you the esteem that comes with doing a thing that you haven't done before. They're just like that. They're good coaches, teachers, guides, and so sometimes there are a lot of ways that this can be done, and I'm not the only person in the universe that does this, and I've met a lot of them through IONS and podcasts and stuff. People from all different religious traditions or none at all do this kind of work according to their own understandings. But anyway, the guide sometimes will say, "Would you just trust me to choose the right people? I know this guy." You know,
oh, that's so cool. That's what I was talking about, the memo. Somewhere there's a memo up that you're the
one
you're
guy just said your light was on. I asked him, "How did
oh
you?" And then another one, this one lady died back in the 1950s, and she said, I used to catalog shop from the Sears and J.C. Penney catalog. Do you remember them? Great big paper
yep,
things. You
yep.
could, she said, they just gave me a catalog, and they said, you just sit over there and patiently look through here, and you'll find somebody that appeals to you. She said, I turned a page and I saw that there was this Catholic priest that does this. And I thought, well, I think I'd like that because I was a Catholic. That would feel familiar to me. So she said, when it came time, she showed herself to me.
Wow, you're in the book. The
I
other
was I was in her catalog.
so let's talk about that, about how does the church handle this? Did you have to modify anything? I mean, I know that you have devout faith and you're doing this in service, but did you have a lot of obstacles when you started talking about it?
No, but I kept in mind that living in community as I do, uh, I live here with 3 other men, and everybody's got their own foibles and preferences and styles and stuff, and you just have to make your life conform to that of other people. Uh, uh, I understand that the church is a big mixture, and so I tried to write respectfully and truthfully. And then before going to publication, the first time I first went to my religious superior, uh, we Dominicans are the world's oldest democracy, and we're pretty proud of that. The Magna Carta was modeled after our constitutions. They're now 810 years old or something like that. So I went to my superior, my provincial, and said, I want to go public with this work. He knew about it already because I'd confided in him. But I went to him and said, would you take a look at this? And then he gave it to one of our theologians to look at. And then he decided to just write a paragraph at the beginning that I put at the beginning of the book, saying he believes that this is the fruit of a prayerful heart. And um, so far so good. I've written 2 books, and the church troubles that I've had have been minor and small.
That's fantastic. Well, and I definitely again, so many people in the IONS group, or I don't know the other group that well. Uh,
Spiritual awakenings.
right. SCAI, I think it is. Um,
Yes.
um, they didn't tell their stories for 30 years. Some
Yeah.
of them, and when I had a spiritually transformative experience, I didn't have the words. I still feel it more than I can verbalize it anyway. So the fact that that's why I love going to these is I learn new ways to express um, the experiences.
Yes. I my first book a long while ago, in
Oh,
2011, was
good. Yeah, please
the
show. I don't have copies of your books. I should have bought them all while I was there, but I had too many.
I wrote the and Toto to the Wizard of Oz as a spiritual adventure. It was published in 2011, but Dorothy has an NDE. She
Yeah.
gets hit in the head with debris from a tornado and plops down on the bed and spins into this other reality. And then at the very end of the film, when she wants to go home, she comes back and lands in that bed, and then has to try to make herself understood. And it's clear that people aren't understanding her and not believing her. And she just says, "Oh, it doesn't matter, Toto, we're home." So that story is a a classic and a well-known story.
Yes.
So I use that in a lot of different ways, not just about NDEs, but about life in general, about the big circle of life and how to come home or come home to one's own skin. Uh, a lot of drama in individual lives has some sort of feeling of displacement. I don't know where I am anymore. I don't recognize my life, or I don't want to be here anymore. Uh, uh, Something about not being rooted, or even the ruby slippers, I think, are grounding. That's where
Right.
your feet are where you touch the ground, and
Right. Right.
and it can be magical when you understand the magic of life. That I'm
Right.
walking around in sacred space all the time.
So where did you get the idea to use The Wizard of Oz? Because that's such a classic. I mean, that was one of the first films that went from black and white to color.
Yes,
And do you see your dreams in color?
sometimes. Yeah,
Or they're not always in color?
sometimes it's just not important in the way that a story's
Oh,
told.
okay.
I don't even
I
pay any
always see
attention to
color.
whether. Sometimes it isn't important. That's why you can film something in black and white and the story still works. But
Right.
and in that story, they made really good use of the emerging technology of Technicolor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Take
Uh, in my childhood, the movie came on once a year, way
right.
before you could record anything. If you wanted to watch it, you didn't even go to the bathroom until the commercial. There was no rewinding it. Uh, you just had to be there. And it used to, when I was a child, people started talking about 2 weeks ahead when they'd start advertising it. Where are you going to watch it? It was before there was a Super Bowl, but it was a Super Bowl party. Uh,
Right.
The
Right.
neighbors gathered, elderly people and little kids, and brought food and popcorn. And it was an event to watch The Wizard of Oz. And I watched it create community among people that gathered just to watch that movie together.
Isn't that cool? So
Yeah.
that's where you got the idea to use it, or
Well,
did
yeah,
you
and
get
I knew that I
inspiration
went to
from a
Catholic school.
dream?
I went to Catholic school, and I was around church a lot, and I knew that the gospel stories in the Bible were supposed to do that, and they kind of did, but not with the joy that the Wizard of Oz did.
Right.
Uh, and the Wizard of Oz was just sweet, and it had profound lessons in it, and so it just impressed me, and it stayed with me over my life. And then I learned I was in a scripture class in seminary. This might be a little arcane, but Mark's gospel is short. It's the first one written, and it uses a road and a geographic motif to tell the story of
Oh.
Jesus. Uh,
Oh.
it's a road towards the city of destiny. So it's not a yellow brick road, but it's a road and a city, and
Oh.
bad things are going to happen in the city. Jesus is going to get crucified in the city.
Oh.
Well, Matthew comes along a little bit later, maybe about 10 years later, and he takes that story, but he adds a prologue and an epilogue to that story. So now it's not just a line, it's a circle. See if I can get on camera here. It's a little awkward. It's not just a line, it's a line that meets itself in a circle. If you can imagine like a string that's linear, and then you make the ends meet and it becomes a circle.
Right.
Well, Matthew is a circular story of that's the Christmas story of I am, who was the name of God given to Moses in the Old Testament.
Mhm.
In the beginning of Matthew, this baby that's going to be born is going to be known as Emmanuel. I am with you.
Oh, wonderful.
And then at the very end of the story, Matthew adds an epilogue where the risen Jesus is talking to the 11 disciples and saying, "Go out into the world and tell the good news, and know that I am
Right.
with you." Not on a mountaintop. I am with you always until the end. And so the story comes back full circle. So I saw that the Oz story was a circular story, and Joseph Campbell, you're
Mhm.
familiar with Joseph Campbell?
Yes.
He talks about the monomythic circular story, that the behind most of the world's grand stories is a big circular motif.
Right.
That both of those, Matthew's Gospel and Wizard of Oz, fit that myth, circular story.
Right. And great teaching vehicles for people not necessarily that could read, but the story could teach. So
Yes.
right. So I think I asked this before, but I don't think I got the answer. How often does this happen? I mean, do you find that you have one a month or
About once a week.
once a week?
Yeah.
Wow. So
And
for over
sometimes
50
I
a
get a little backlogged, but it's not the only thing I do. And I have a number of different prayer partners, but you still have to make an appointment with each other. We're all busy people. And so sometimes I don't like it when I get more than 6 or 8 of them in the line. And they don't seem to mind. It's not like they're kept on hold because your call is important to us. It's not like that. They
Well,
don't mind, but I try to like that right now. I have about 3 that are in line, but
wow.
on the weekend I'll be with some prayer partners, and we do this mostly over Zoom because the pandemic drove us to Zoom,
Well,
and
it's probably still just as strong, right?
it works just fine.
Oh, that's great.
Once in a while, I'm with a prayer partner physically where we can simply sit down in the same room and get the job done. What I do in that process is I use an app on my phone that records and then transcribes.
Okay.
So I push a button. We always do protected prayer. We never move into this realm. I don't pick up hitchhikers on this plane or on any other. I
That's
make sure that we're protected and that it's the Spirit's doing, and then we allow the person to speak either through me or through another person if another person has that gift, and we record the whole thing, and then I get a transcript back that then takes me a number of hours to clean up because
yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen your own speech
Yes.
transcribed. It might amaze you how many sentences you don't complete. You know, how much bad syntax and ums and ahs and stuff.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to just do an edit that makes it not annoying to read. And but that's a part of my life anymore. It's just a
So,
staple.
are you ever asked to connect with loved ones that are on this side, or is it mostly they're connect? It's all on the other side.
No, they're vetted, and I think if they're not surprised by the time they get to me. Their guardian or their other team members have told them, here's what these people do. This is their expertise. This is what you should expect from them. They know that they need to have an answer to the question, who would you like to have come for you? They've been told that in advance, and so they've given it some thought. But no, they know that that's not what we do. So they don't come asking for messages to be conveyed. That's just, I'm trying to stay a Catholic priest and not be a former Catholic priest. And if I were to begin doing that kind of thing, I would imperil my membership, and I
Oh,
don't see the need to do that.
yeah, no. And I wasn't. I guess I'm just curious about all of this so much because it's so different. I don't. Do you know of anyone else that does what you do in the Catholic Church?
There are a lot of Catholic people who have these gifts. In fact, some of the better known people that are in Ions and that show up at the keynotes at the conventions and stuff, many of them have Catholic backgrounds. Uh, if and some have some sort of Catholic practice, uh, but canonically in the church, my status is contingent upon bishops and superiors approving of what I do, which is
Yeah.
different from most people. So, I'm okay with that. Jesus moved through a world that had lots of givens. No one of us arrived here with the ability to just remake the world in our own image. We all live with some parameters and constraints, and so these are some of mine.
Yeah. Well, I just wondered if you knew of anyone else, because I imagine there's a backlog. I mean, you think of all the beings that are dying, and in each, we have 8 billion people on the earth, so there's a lot of beings leaving. Do you find that you only get like English speaking ones?
No, it's just recently I was dealing with a Frenchman
Wow.
who brought that up and who said, I would be speaking to all of you in French if you understood it, but I'm forming my words as I always have, and they're coming out in English.
Wow, that's cool.
I've seen that a lot. Most of the people that I've dealt with are from the United States, but not all. And most of the time, they include something in the dream that kind of that makes me feel like I might be in a different country.
Wow,
I wonder about it. Very often at the beginning of the process, after we prayed our protective prayer, I'll ask a guardian if they wouldn't mind just giving a little bit of clarity. And sometimes their gender, the person's gender, was not made clear. They were somebody that died in a car crash, but I couldn't tell if they were male or female. Sometimes there's a crowd scene, and I'm not sure if I'm helping one person or many people. And sometimes nationality. Am I in this country or that country? Those things are just a little helpful to get things started.
I see. Okay. And could you share what you're hoping all of this will do? I mean,
yes.
One of your stories, I think it was with Jack Canfield, when I watched that interview, you had, or I don't know, maybe it wasn't that one. You had said that you helped a gentleman be genteel, that he had not been genteel, and then you asked him to be there when
that was the very first person. This is an example of a story coming full circle. Ray, the guy that died in flames, who wanted to see his wife. I told him, I said, well, we'll work with you. And the way that we helped him, first, I said, first of all, you're going to be needing to move. And he hadn't seen anybody since he died.
Wow.
He chose isolation in the afterlife. And so he got what he wanted. He wanted everybody to leave him alone. And so they did, except his guardian. But so he hadn't moved. And I said, well, Ray, don't you think we ought to get you moving about a little bit before your wife passes? I asked him, what about your dad? You never mentioned your dad. He had mentioned his mother, but she was kind of a negative influence. So he mentioned, I said, what about your dad? And he said, well, I didn't know him very well. He died in the war when I was 10. And I said, I was a little afraid of him. And I said, well, did you guys ever have a really good father-son moment? And he said, yeah, once we went and looked at cars together. And I said, well, what if we asked him to come and not get too close, let you take a look at him, decide whether you think you're safe and whether this is a trick or anything like that. And so his dad came, and I said, do you feel safe to go with him for a walk, just for a practice, just to get you moving? And he said, yeah, I am. So we left him. We came back about a week later. They went and looked at cars somewhere. Not in the 50s when his dad died, or not in 1960 when he died. We asked, did you have to time travel? And he said, no, we went and looked at the new ones. So, somewhere there was this father and son reunion at a car lot somewhere in spirit, and which I just think is delightful. And then I said, okay, now you know how to move about, and you know how to come back where you are in case you feel like you need to, like Hansel and Gretel. It's good to know you have a base to return to should you need to. But we need to get you ready to move. And I think your problem is, and I don't think you're going to like it, but I'm going to tell you. And he said, what? And I said, well, you just act like a caveman. Every time you talk about your wife, you act like you own her. If you got the chance, you would grab her by the hair and pull her into your cave. Well, he didn't like hearing that, because who would? But I just said, I'm being blunt with you on purpose because I think you're man enough to take it. And cancer has its own schedule. And I don't think you have time to waste. We need to get you ready quickly. That's what you asked us to do, remember? So he listened to that. And I said, I think you're going to be in a group when she passes, if you get to be there. You're not the only person who loves her. You're the only dead husband. Her other husband was still here. You're the only person with whom she had a child. That's really important. But she probably has parents and siblings and friends that have died, people that she hadn't even met yet when you died, that she loved later in life. I think they're going to be a group. I don't think it'll be a huge surprise party, but I think there'll be a few people, and I think you belong there. Just get ready to be in a small group. Doesn't that make sense to you? And he said, oh, yeah, good. So anyway, we met with him one last time, the second last time as it ended up, and we said, "So Ray, what's new?" And he said, "Well, big news, my wife passed." I said, "Oh, well, that is big news. Tell us about that." And he said, "Well, it was just like you said. There was me, but there was some other people too." And she said, "You'd have been proud of me. I was a perfect gentleman." So, well, terrific, Ray. We're so happy for you, and I guess our work here is done. Time to say goodbye. And saying goodbye to somebody you'd never even met. Weird, uh, but uh, but I said, Ray, before you go, now that you've learned how to watch people and to be a greeter in the afterlife, I wonder if you'd keep an eye on me, and when it's time for me to cross, would you be part of the team that welcomes me? And he said, "Why, sir, I would be most honored. Just look for the perfect gentleman."
Oh,
So in
wow.
my book, I call him Ray, the perfect gentleman.
That's such a transformation. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a really sweet story, and I use that story a lot because people like you ask, "How did this get started?" And so that story gets retold a lot.
Well, and have you asked other people to be there? You're going to have a whole gymnasium.
Oh yeah. I don't know how to work. My sister and my younger sister is also my publisher, and she has a lot of the same gifts that I do, and she's also a prayer partner. And she and I developed a thing that we call an afterlife birthday party, getting dying people ready to imagine who they would like to have come for them. And when they're ready for it, they might not be, immediately, but there should be a party in your honor. Today is the Feast of All Saints in the Catholic world. And when a person is canonized as saint, the next thing the church has to do is figure out a day on the calendar to celebrate them. What's the day going to be? And the church's default position is to try to pick the day of their death to be their birth into eternal life. So whatever it is your day, Kathy, is on the calendar, that would be the day when we remember you and honor you. Well, so we did that with our mother as she was passing, and she imagined who she would like to have come for her, and she came up. She was 91 years old, and the first name she came out with was someone we never heard of. She said, "Well, I was in the second grade, and there was this little girl that was my first friend. It was the first time anybody loved me who wasn't in my family."
Oh.
And then she moved away, and I never saw her again. She's same age as me, so she's probably dead. So I wonder if she would come. And Catherine said, well, why wouldn't she? We'll put her name at the top of the list. And who's next? And then she said, well, your father. They were married 52 years.
That friend got the first.
Yeah, he was number 2 on the list, but number 2 is not so bad. And so he was the second, and she listed a few others. And then Catherine said, well, aren't you forgetting somebody? And she said, well, who? Catherine said, well, Mother Mary. My mom was a devout Catholic. She prayed the rosary all the time. If she wasn't watching Houston Astros baseball, she was watching EWTN. We're in the World Series right now, and my mom is very present to me these days.
Oh, that's so cool.
She died in 2012, but 10 years ago, but she's still an Astros fan, and she's hanging out. I don't know, when you do the bride.
I saw the banners in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little altar over there in the corner.
Oh, that's great.
So anyway, Mom, Catherine said, well, what about Mother Mary? And she said, oh, would she come? Well, of course she would come. You love her and she loves you. Why wouldn't she come? She just has to be invited. Well, Catherine just said, Mom just said, well, if I invite Mary, I have to invite Joseph. You don't invite one half of a married couple to a party. And so that's where we left it. And then a few days after that, she passed. And, we weren't present to that party, but we'll be present to future ones.
Well, it sounds like you're still in contact with her.
She's not very talkative. She wasn't in life. So she'll do an energetic presence sometimes and let me know that she's around. And then sometimes my dad was more the talker, and maybe once a year, every couple of years. It's not like we chat each other up all the time, but once in a while he'll come through just to say hello.
Oh, wow. Are they like your guardian angel in some ways too? I mean, do you find that family members?
I pray to them. This is Catholic practice that they taught me when I was a child, that we can call upon our holy ones. Tomorrow is the Feast of All Souls,
Right.
which is their day. That's the day on the calendar when I honor my parents, because they're not canonized saints, but I believe they're holy and they're in God's heart. So tomorrow is their feast day. So I'll be praying intently for my parents and other loved ones tomorrow. But yeah, I ask them to, with help for all kind of things. And then once in a while, one person, somebody that's crossing, will remind me of my mom or my dad, and I'll say, you know what, I'll invite my mom or dad to be a part of the team for them. And they don't necessarily come through and talk. They can just show up and kind of wave in the background.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, Father Nathan, I would love, I don't have copies of your books. Do you have the other volume 1 at least that
Yes,
you show?
they look very much alike. The Toto book I already showed you earlier, but then this one,
upside down. Oh, there we go. No, it's not.
This one is the second, Afterlife Interrupted 2. The other one looks just like it. It's over my shoulder. We kept the graphics just for the branding. That's what people to do.
Yes.
But they're books 1 and 2. They're available on Amazon, and they're available in 3 formats. They're available as paper books. They're electronic books. Yeah, they're also audio books, which I voiced myself, mostly with the prayer partners who were involved to begin with.
Oh, fantastic.
That one, I love that one because one of my prayer partners has since died, and I love her dearly, and I get to hear her voice again when I listen to the recorded version of book 2. But anyway, they're available easily, and they're not expensive. And should anybody that hears this podcast or views this video, if you want to contact me to talk about any of this, I'm almost certainly going to ask you, have you read the books? Not because I'm trying to shill for, making another buck. I have a vow of poverty. It's not that. But the stories are well told, and they're illustrative of things that you could learn before we talk, so that if we do talk on a Zoom call or something, we'll have a more profitable conversation because we have kind of a lot of shared stories together.
Well, I want to make sure that everyone knows how to get a hold of you. Your website is nathan-castle.com. I've put it in the comments and in the description, and I hope people will go to your site. Is there any other way to reach you?
That's the best way to reach me, and I don't like to be contacted through Facebook Messenger, so please don't do that. There just aren't enough hours in the day for me to chase down all of these different ways that the social media stuff works.
Yeah.
I can say, hey, here's the way to do it. Just go online, go to my website, click on the contact thing. The contact thing has a short few questions to answer, like where do you live? So if I try to arrange a phone call, I'm not calling you in the middle of the night. And then on there it says, please, if you're going to ask a question that pertains to something that you saw in a podcast, please have read at least the first of the 2 books so that we have a common basis, so I don't have to explain things that are already available.
Right. Well, what you do is such a blessing and so needed and so loving. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for how well you articulate everything too.
Yeah, may I add one more that I didn't get in?
Sure.
During the pandemic, I had the opportunity to clean up my YouTube channel, which used to look like my grandmother's attic. It was just a dump for video of different kinds, but it's well organized. I have a lot of teaching videos and things on there that people might find interesting, and other podcasts. So that's Father Nathan Castle on YouTube.
Great. And again, if they go to your website, they'll be able to find everything.
Yes.
And I want to encourage people to read these books. I didn't get them because I was in the bookstore and there was so many books, and I had to carry all that stuff home. But I'm going to get them because I just love the frequency of all this. It's so full of, as I said, service, but it's what we're here for, is to help each other walk each other home.
And to know that death doesn't get to define you or anybody else. Even if a person die young and tragically, that's not the end of them. and you don't need to dwell on how they died. Nobody really wants that. If you, I can try to point grieving people's imaginations in a more hopeful direction
Right.
while they're moving through the tragedy that befell them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So again, everyone, please go to nathan-castle.com, and I think you will benefit immensely, no matter what religious background you are.
Or none at all.
Yes. Okay. Thank
All right.
you.
All right. God bless you, Kathy.
God
Thanks for
bless
being
you too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.